Yeah.
It's from the
Set up on the local campaigns.
Just hate it when that happens.
Yeah.
Come on, guys, do something.
Yeah.
So what is it you do?
So I work at the
Okay. You have a company or do you
so I work freelance. Most of the jobs I wasn't have to work on a show.
Yes.
Oh, wow, so it's always constant,
Chaotic,
yeah. Oh, wow, and
Yeah.
how does that go?
It used to.
The big, I remember the.
Oh, yeah.
Did that affect you?
Yeah, that was oh, the strokes.
Yeah.
Not too much.
Yeah. Right, it's now 7 o'clock, so I think we ought to start. Welcome to this session of the Overview and Scrutiny Committee Services. I'm Councillor Carol Coburn and I chair, and on my right is Councillor Philip Townsend, who's my vice chair. As we have a lot of officers, some with new faces and new titles this evening, I thought perhaps we could start with that rather than anything else. I think this is the wrong order, Kim, and then we get down to
No,
that.
that's fine.
If we could start then with Chris, if you could introduce yourself and tell us your title as well, please.
Good evening. I'm Chris Harrod and I am the incoming Deputy Democratic Services Manager, not formally starting until next Monday.
Shaylee?
Hi, I'm Shaylee Gibb. I'm working as the Dem Services Manager on an interim basis alongside my Electoral Services Manager role that most of you probably know me from.
And a totally new face, Suzanne?
I'm Suzanne Robinson. I'm Interim Assistant Director of Regulatory Services, covering for Richard Homewood for a couple of months.
And Claire?
I'm
Claire, it's your name.
Yeah.
I just introduced yourself.
Claire Upton, head plan.
Charlotte?
I'm Charlotte Hall, I'm the Arts and Cultural Services Manager at Waverley.
And Peter, if you could introduce yourself as well.
I'm Peter Glample, I'm Director and CEO of Farnham Martins.
Yeah, I won't check on before taking all of that in, but at least you know we've got a good broad sweep of officers here tonight to help us. Let's move on then to the agenda. Apologies for absence and substitutions.
Thank you. We have apologies received from Councillor George Hess and Councillor George Murray is here as a substitute.
Thank you very much. There's two sets of minutes you'll have noticed from the Overview and Scrutiny Committee. The minutes of the 10th and the 24th of September. Can I take those minutes as read?
Great.
Declarations of interest, Kim.
None received prior to the meeting.
Does anybody have an interest they wish to declare at the meeting? Questions then from members of the public. And we have one question. I don't think the gentleman's with us, is he?
No.
It's to do with the CAB, and I'd like to read this out because I felt I was slightly ill-informed, shall we say, at the last meeting. So if I could read the question and the answer, and then just make a few comments, and if anybody else wishes to join in. So the question from John Schoengebel, I hope. He says, I applaud the new long-term funding arrangements for the Citizens Advice Service across Waverley. Will the agreement specify the levels of availability of face-to-face consultations and opening hours or days for the Citizens Advice officers within the borough? And Jane Todd has replied that the current funding, 150,000 per year for the Citizens Advice South West Surrey, will be transferred from the Thriving Communities Commissioning Fund, which is what we discussed, if you remember, at the last meeting, to the Council's community service budget from 1st of April 25. The delivery of identified services will be supported through a 3-year grant funding agreement arrangement from the 1st of April 25 to the 31st of March 28. Waverley's funding is a contribution towards the cost to deliver the information and advice service. Citizens Advice also receives funding from Guildford Borough Council. Given the Council's collaboration and the merger of the two Citizens Advice Bureau to deliver the same service across the boroughs, both councils will be aligning their funding arrangements in future. Officers across both councils will be working with Citizens Advice South West Surrey over the coming months to establish the service expectations and monitoring information required whilst acknowledging the sovereignty of local borough need. The funding agreements will set out how and when people will have access to the information and advice service Monday to Friday. This will include the various levels of support Citizens Advice provides. Thank you to Jane for that comprehensive reply. But I just wanted to raise this as a bit of an issue, because if you remember at the last meeting, we had a big discussion on this. It was about removing the Citizens Advice from the commissioning, the Thriving Communities Fund, and putting it into a separate. And it was interesting that the officer kept correcting herself from saying service level agreement to legal agreement. Since then, I and as it turns out, Councillor Murray is here tonight, have been contacted by the local group. In fact, we were contacted the day after we had all voted through this decision, thinking it was the best thing the Citizens Advice on all the information we had, to say that in fact they were cutting back on the services in Farnham, Cranley and Hazelmere. Godalming, for some reason, remains unchanged, unscathed. And I just really feel that somehow we didn't really discuss the importance of the CAB to us, what it does for us, and the importance of our influence on what it produces. So I wondered if we could perhaps ask him, stop me, and in fact, Chris, if I'm going beyond my remit, but I would like to have a breakdown, if possible, of the CAB service across both Guildford and Waverley. I'd like to understand the need, because I may be barking completely at the wrong tree, but I can't see the need getting any less in Farnham, and yet we're cutting back on the day. Now, I can't speak for Cranley or Hazelmere, but you've all got voices. I'm sure you're equally as worried. So basically, is there any way we could ask, please, for this committee to have information about the numbers, the service provision for CAB? Councillor Rabini.
Yes, thank you. We're discussing this very thing at Hazelmere at the moment. As you know, as a town, we probably give more then than any other town. And we do wonder if we're being used as the yardstick by the others. And in fact, we're looking at whether we should cut back, but we too want to know exactly what they're doing because of this threat to cut back on delivery. So I'd be very interested in that report.
Right. I don't want to turn it into a very big discussion now because it's only an important question on the agenda. But if you're in agreement and if it is possible, I think it would help us all to understand what's going on with the CAB in our individual towns. So are you all right?
Yes.
We go forward.
Good point.
So
Madam Chairman, could I just add
yes,
something?
certainly.
So obviously, this gentleman, John, he's obviously worried that they are going to close it on a certain day and they are going to cut back face to face. I believe Guildford Council don't do face to face; it's all telephone. So as they merge the two service level or the two legal agreements, those legal agreements could come in that face to face is discontinued. Tomorrow I have a meeting, an SLA meeting at Farnham Town Council. We currently fund the CAB in Farnham to the tune of 20,000. So we will be meeting with the trustees tomorrow, and I believe the leader of the council and the officers to discuss their SLA agreement for next year. And so part of that discussion will be, the questions will be asked, will you be continuing face to face? And you know, how do we feel about that, and whether as a Farnham Town Council with our 20,000 we can guarantee the face to face. So these are the discussions we'll be having at Farnham Town Council tomorrow.
Can I just stop you there?
Yes,
Because you know, it is out with this committee, what you're discussing at Farnham Town Council. But what I want to do is to make sure that we as a committee are looking at the provision in Waverley. You know, I don't mean to be rude to Guildford, but you know, my issue here is the provision in Waverley and only that provision in Waverley. And I want to make sure that it is the maximum that we can have for the demand that I think there is across Waverley. But until we have the facts, then we can't actually make that case. So if I could draw that to a conclusion, but thank you very much. Yes, Councillor.
Just as a byline, Chairman, I was actually talking to a lady that actually is a councillor for the CAB, and they're already very loaded with elderly people wanting help. And so it's the busiest they've been this time of the year.
I think, you know, this is what we all feel. It's all a bit anecdotal, but if we can get some information, then we can actually see what the thrust is. Oh, thank you. Hello.
Hello, apologies for lateness.
No, not at all. I was just very rudely asking who you were. Would you like to introduce yourself to the people that haven't met you before?
Yes,
including me?
yeah, apologies for lateness. Ezra Wallace, Joint Strategic Director for Economy Planning and Place.
That's why I always ask you
Exactly,
to come up with your own descriptions, because if you don't know them, how the heck do you expect
Well,
others
just
to
about remember.
keep up with it? But thank you very much, Ezra. Welcome. Right, moving on then, we have a question from a member, from Councillor George Hess. Another interesting question about whether Waverley Borough Council has conducted a survey across the borough to establish the number of unoccupied houses. And he believes that the borough should undertake this research and feed the information into the Department for Levelling Up Housing and Communities. That's gone back to MHCLG, hasn't it? He's not up to speed here. To assist in possible national policy changes. Claire, can you answer that? Are you here to answer? I mean, do we know how many empty houses there are?
Yes,
Yeah.
we do returns to CMG.
And is this an issue in Waverley?
It's no bigger issue than any other authority, so there is a number.
I'm surprised it's an issue at all. You'd think everyone would just immediately
and there's
whack it
lots
in.
of reasons why
Yeah.
one does, lots of reasons, but yeah, there is some difficulties within the borough.
And could we, can we find these figures easily?
Yes, we can find in the bar accumulating, so.
Could you, yeah, so we could have a response perhaps to George, a written response that we could all see. And then we could see, because it's one of these angles on housing you sort of forget about really. I think partly because you always think that everything in Waverley is going to be built, you know, as quickly as possible, but yeah, it's interesting this is an issue. Right, moving on then, item number 6, which is the Committee Forward Work Programme. We have Chris who's going to be helping us in future for this, but it's on about page 19 or 20. I think it's 20 is the important one, really.
Yes,
Yeah.
it is.
So you can see what we have in the upcoming items. The others have all either been agreed or dealt with. Charlotte's here tonight on the 19th, and we've got Jeanette with us.
Yes, we have online.
Oh, online. Oh, there you are, Jeanette. Sorry. Yes, Jeanette's with us for the air quality. And then as you can see, we've got just one item confirmed at the moment for January, another one confirmed probably for March, and then another couple that may or may not be ready in time. So as ever, you know, if you have an item you want to bring on into the committee work programme, please feel free to do so. But I am hoping now that we've got a better, not a better team, a stronger team,
Stable.
more of them to do. We will actually get a little more help with analysing, you know, what we should be taking forward and what we should be concentrating on. Because we had a pre-meeting with Chris, in which we explained our frustration when we get things too late to be of any use. You know, we're rushing to try and get something done, or when things are pulled because items aren't ready. So hopefully we'll have a bit more continuity of our forward programme. Please, any comments, any items that you think would be worth putting on the forward work programme? It's your committee. Just, you know, well, it's not him anymore now.
It'll be Chris and whoever's becoming our executive and scrutiny advisor.
That's Chris basically at the moment. So hammer Chris with any solutions, any questions that you have. Anybody else, anything to say on the committee work programme? As I say, it's been a bit difficult to keep the continuity, but hopefully it will get a little smoother. Which brings us then to item 7, which is the update on the local plan. those of you who were at the last, was it the last but one? We put forward all the sort of 6 items that had been requested earlier, but haven't really come to, we haven't had an update. So Andrew has agreed to give us basically an update on all those matters and anything else to do with the local plan. So thank you, Andrew, for your time. And if you would like to give us an update, please.
Yes, thank you very much. I've made a few notes, so I'll just take you through those, and then very happy to answer any questions. I should say I had a message from Councillor Townsend, who was hoping to join the meeting, and she was waiting to be let in. I don't know if she has been let in now.
She's here.
She is, perfect. Okay, thank you. Right, well, members may remember that on the 30th of July, we did an all-member briefing on the local plan and explained where we were on the timetable, what we were anticipating with the new government's agenda, and we talked about the scope and content of the plan, the development of the vision, and progress on the evidence base. So I'm not going to go through those issues in detail again, but pick up on a few things that have happened since then. Obviously, on that same day, the 30th of July, you'll remember the new NPPF, the draft, arrived, along with proposed changes to the standard method. And between them, it's thrown a bit of a spanner in the works, because they've introduced a huge amount of uncertainty, particularly around the housing numbers. The current standard method assessment of local housing need is 720 dwellings a year. The new standard method would increase that to 1,374 a year. So that's a very significant change. That's sort of 94% above the current standard method and considerably more above the local plan. And if we treated that as a requirement in the new local plan over 20 years, that would be over 27,000 new homes, which is a fundamental change to the position we were in prior to the 30th of July. We shared our analysis on the NPPF and the standard method with members prior to the deadline in September, and members may have responded individually as well. We also circulated a letter sent by the leader to the Deputy Prime Minister, which, whilst it was constructive where possible about the government's proposals, it explained the deep concern the council has about the new standard method, which we don't see as being a credible starting point for the new local plan. And some of the facts that we put into that were in that letter, it would be nearly 3.5 times more homes than were provided in the previous 20 years. It would result in a population growing by 50%, 35,000 extra workers, where we're not anticipating, we're only anticipating around a fifth of that in jobs. And this was backed up by a technical note from our consultants who are working on the housing and economic development needs assessment. So on behalf of the council, obviously a strong position has been taken that the standard method number is not right for Waverley, and it's something that will cause us a huge amount of additional work going forward, because if we have to start with that as the starting point, we'll be on the back foot with a lot of the technical work. So it's really very difficult for us to progress as fast as we would like on the local plan until the National Planning Policy Framework and the standard method are finalised. We may still get this by Christmas. The government's still, I think, anticipating delivering on that pledge, but I would expect that they've received thousands of representations, so we'll have to see. The plan is, if we do get that this side of Christmas, we will set up an all-member briefing as quickly as we can during January, before taking a report on the implications to the executive. And we'll also have a town and parish forum to bring them up to speed on where things are. I should say we've kept the towns and parishes updated on our deliberations on the MPPF and the response that the council made. We will prepare a new local plan timetable once we've got greater certainty about this context. This is still going to have to be indicative because we're not going to have the new local plan regulations now until next summer at the earliest. Previous government had anticipated those being available to us this month, in fact. And it's very clear to us that there is going to be additional technical work to undertake, including a Greenbelt review, but also further engagement with local communities, because the issues are pretty major that the council's facing. Whilst we haven't been able to progress as quickly as possible, we have been getting on with pieces of work that we know are going to be required and they're not going to be wasted effort. And that's included a range of studies, including the Housing and Economic Development Needs Assessment, Gypsy and Traveller Accommodation Assessment, and the Housing Land Availability Assessment that we're doing in-house, to name a few. But there's a lot going on, and there's a lot of further pieces of work we need to commission. Also, we've been preparing a draft vision and outcomes for the local plan, and we had some early engagement earlier in the year. Now that the corporate strategy is finalised, and once we get the new MPPF, we'll be able to finalise that. And the intention is that the Overview and Scrutiny Committee has an opportunity to input into that and other elements of the plan before they're considered by the council. So, Chair, that's really as much as I can tell you at this point. I hope it's been helpful, but I'm happy to try and answer any questions. And I know you have Claire with you as well.
Thank you very much, Andrew. Right, who wants to kick this off? I'm sure we've all got some questions. Right, David, Councillor Munrose.
Yeah, thanks very much, Andrew. That's very helpful. I've got sort of three questions really. First of all, can you update us of what anyone knows about the grey belt? And if you say I haven't a clue, I perfectly understand. Last time I got involved in this, the council were calling for sites to become available. Could you give us an update on that again, if you can? And thirdly, has there been any shifts, as far as you know, about rulings by various planning inspectors to reflect sort of informally the new regime, or are they still sticking to what is actually, well, set by the last government? Thanks very much.
Okay, Andrew, can you kick off?
Yeah, thank you, Councillor Munro. Yeah, in terms of grey belt, the proposal was that, or the proposal is that council should undertake a review of green belt boundaries where they can't meet their housing needs in any other way, and identify those areas of land that make a limited contribution to the purposes of the green belt, which are primarily about preventing urban sprawl and protecting open character. The caveat to that is that the proposed definition specifically excludes areas and assets of particular importance, and those are defined in footnote 7 of the MPPF, and it includes AONB, or national landscapes as they're now known, special protection areas, and other nationally important constraints. So if you actually overlay those constraints over the Waverley Green Belt, it covers, I think at the moment, about 85% of the Waverley Green Belt. And if as I think the council would hope, the proposed changes to the national landscape boundary go ahead, that will cover additional areas. So it will come to about 92% of the area. So grey belt as a concept, if it goes ahead, has fairly limited relevance to Waverley, but that doesn't mean that we're not still going to be having to review the green belt if we can't meet our housing needs, and we know we can't do that in any other way. So we will still have to be undertaking that work, but the concept of green belt, of grey belt in itself, I think is really not going to be a big issue for the council. Sorry, that was quite a long a long answer because it's
The LAA, have you started doing any assessment of sites or?
yes, yeah, the team is working hard on the assessment of sites that came in, not only the ones that came in from the call for sites, but all the other proposals that we've been aware of over the years, and those are all feeding into the process. And the county council's been helping us with an accessibility assessment of the sites, and they've recently provided a draft of that. So that work is ongoing. It's quite a big piece of work, and there are additional bits of technical work, including a landscape sensitivity assessment that we will need to do. But it is well underway, and obviously at some point the council will need to decide whether it wants to do a further call for sites, because certainly in relation to some land uses we didn't get a large number of sites come forward, and we will be having to perhaps cast the net again. In relation to the position that inspectors are taking, I don't know if Claire, if you want to pick that one up.
Legally, the inspectors have to make the decisions based on what's in force at the time, so they can't give any weight to the NPPF. But I think it is fair to say that we are getting dates for inquiries and hearings very quickly, and we're also getting decisions. So just for example, there was a 4-day public inquiry that finished 2 weeks ago in Guildford, and we had the decision on Monday. So obviously the inspectorate are getting their decisions out in advance of the NPPF being published, because as soon as it's published, they'll have to then take that into account.
Right. Okay.
So I gather a lot of authorities are rushing to, get their examination going on what they've already got in place. Trying to sort of beat any deadline for changes, which is sucking in a lot of sort of expert witnesses and people who were. We were just talking to somebody in Farnham, and they're just rushed off their feet, running up and down the country. With everyone trying to get ahead of the game with their own local plan.
I think that's absolutely the case, and I think probably if there's been a bit of a miss within pins to get things moving very, very quickly.
Yeah. So does anybody else have any questions on this? Okay, I thank you. I had. Councillor Hyman, I gather you wish to speak on this matter or ask a question.
Okay, yes, thank you very much, good evening members, and thanks Andrew for that introduction. I'm just concerned still that we've got the September letter from the portfolio holder and the leader at Waverley to the Deputy Prime Minister regarding the housing targets and the standard assessments, and I quote, saying the level of growth required to meet the standard method assessment and needs is simply unachievable in a borough that is heavily constrained by national and international designations, including the Surrey Hills and National Landscape, and 3 special protection areas. And I really think that I want to know at the moment, am I the only person who understands the constraints of the special protection areas, Chairman? Are you confident that your members of your committee understand what the legal constraints are in terms of the People Over Wind ruling and CG Fry, the most important rulings? Because I don't think they've been answered. And do we have a starting point for any plan? Before we look at any more calls for sites and that sort of thing, is a spatial strategy, and that comes from an appropriate assessment. We have to have an appropriate assessment first. So, have we got an appropriate assessment of the mitigation being conducted as yet? Are we starting this, or are we just leaving everything to later? Thanks.
Councillor Hyman, if we don't know, we haven't been listening to you, because you've said the same thing to us so many times. Councillor, can anyone answer that? Or do we just? Andrew?
Well, just to say that we have appointed specialist consultants to undertake the habitat regulation assessment alongside the plan. So it's not something that comes at the end. It's something that they'll work alongside us. They are actually they're the same consultants that will be undertaking the sustainability appraisal for the plan. So it's something that will be underpinning what we do, it's a different set of consultants than the previous plan. So there will be, if you like, fresh eyes to reassure the council that we're taking this extremely seriously.
So we don't have an assessment of the mitigation at the moment then, and we just got to wait for that for how long?
But I think, Andrew, just to chip in, the message this evening is we don't know what we're dealing with yet. So until we know the number that will be published in the NPPF, we will then revise our timetable and be working on all the different strands of work to prepare a plan. But we don't know what it is we're dealing with yet, Councillor Hindman, so we can't do any assessment against anything when we don't know what it is we're assessing.
Can I just ask a question which follows on from that, Claire, which is what sort of worries me a little bit about all this waiting for Godot, as I keep thinking of, sorry, great fan of the theatre of the observed. But, you know, it does seem to be eternal that this way. And surely we as a borough can assess our own constraints. I mean, I'm not talking in terms of, you know, I'm talking just the land that we know has got special designation. And we can work out approximately how much land we actually have that's available. In my submission, I did tell the Secretary of State that I thought grey belt was a nonsense definition because you've always been able to build on green belt if it's an exception to policy, because, you know, that there was some reason why it shouldn't be protected. So I thought that was, you know, a pointless thing. But for what Andrew was saying, if the Surrey Hills AONB is extended, as we all hope it will be, we're down to 92% or whatever, you know, being covered. So, you know, we are a highly constrained borough. And what really worries me about all of this is if we wait too long, the damage that's going to be done to this borough by the speculative development that's going to come in, and they're whacking it in on a weekly basis at the moment. Because they know, you know, it's a chance to do it at the moment. The borough's weak, hasn't got a 5-year housing land supply. And I think the more quickly we can get our evidence out there, you know, concrete evidence as to what our borough can and cannot do, at least then we've got evidence that we're not just being awkward, because there's no way we could fulfill. I mean, the only way you could ever fulfill that housing target is to sort of build on every sports pitch and everything else we've got in Farnham that's green. I mean, there's no other way. We just don't have the spare spaces that you know, Angela Rayner sort of seems to think we can magic up, you know, in the shires. Well, she's wrong. But as I say, the bit that really worries me is this bit in the middle where we're sort of waiting for her to say something without actually getting to the point where we've got the evidence to say, look, you know.
Yeah, so on that point, I think sort of Andrew has sort of covered this. We are doing the work. We are almost certain that the NPPF will be published before Christmas, so we're not really going to have to wait very long. But some of this work, you know, will span over quite a long period of time. You're quite right in that there will be a gap between the publishing of the new NPPF with whatever number and the adoption of a local plan. And in that gap, which is not going to be unsubstantial because there's a lot of work that needs to be done, and then we will continue to be, and it is a continue because it's the same as we're already experienced because we haven't got a 5-year housing land supply, a little bit of a hostage to the speculative type of development that we are already have experienced for the last 2.5-3 years. So yes, that is reality, and that will be a reality for a lot of authorities. One of the things that through the call for sites is we have met with a number of the developers, and it may be that some of those sites will come forward sooner rather than later in a shaped way, working with us, rather than what we have seen of almost speculative developments popping out of nowhere in the form of a planning application. But it will be a really challenging time, and you know, we will continue to be in the situation that we have been over the last 3 years.
And we all know, and we've said this several times at the planning committee, the best developments are the ones that have been discussed with the community, with the borough. And then they come into your committee, we're all delighted with them, the parish council's delighted with them, the wider community is delighted, and we can nod them through, well, not nod them through, but you know what I mean, we can support them. Whereas, you know, some of what's coming through at the moment, it's very difficult to support because, you know, they're just whacking in, you know, any application they fancy on a green space they've been trying to develop for years. So, you know, I think the borough at the moment is very, very vulnerable to speculative development, and anything we can do to get evidence to back up our case is obviously much.
Yeah, which is absolutely what we're doing.
Right, does anybody else have any other questions, or shall we move on to the next item? Thank you, Andrew, as ever,
Okay,
for
thank you all.
giving us the time, and Claire for clarifying that as well. Please, can we just always ask for lots of information on the local plan? I mean, I can't be the only person who gets frustrated that we don't seem to know what's going on. You know, just keep us informed as to where we're going, what we need to do, because, you know, the wider public out there does want to know as well. The towns and parishes want to know. Some of them want an indicative number quickly so that they can actually start preparing an upgrade to the neighbourhood plan. So, you know, it is quite important that the information is filtered out, or the information that we can give.
Absolutely, but absolutely, it would be irresponsible of us to filter information that's going to change in a month's time.
Well, yes, you could tell us it's going to change.
Well, you know that already.
You know, I think I'm a great one for communication, as you know.
Yeah, no,
you know.
totally agree. And we'll continue to work on that.
But thank you, Andrew and Claire, on that. Yes.
Through you, is the committee happy to remove the 6 outstanding recommendations that are on part 1 of 4 of the work programme as being satisfactorily updated now?
I think so, don't you? Does anybody disagree?
Okay, thank you very much.
But we'll keep nagging. Which moves us on to item 8, which is the new vision and strategy for the Museum of Farnham. We've got Sean Hall and Peter Glanville, I ought to know. But anyway, from St Maltings, who are going to present this report and explain to us we hope, the exciting future of the museum. So who's going to start off? Charlotte, thank you.
Thank you, Chair. I wonder if, before jumping into the report, if you'd appreciate just a quick update on the conservation works that are happening at the museum. It sort of looks like slow progress, so I hope to just sort of fill you in and update you on that. I've only got sort of a couple of copies of these, but I thought for your interest, you might want to flick through a presentation that was.
And this side.
Oh, I beg your pardon.
Thank you.
So it was a presentation just put together for us by our historic building consultant. And it just really heightens the importance really of Wilmer House as a sort of an architecturally really significant building. I think completely sort of understated its importance in the country. So it's really exciting that it's finally kind of getting the love that it deserves. So hopefully there's some nice pictures. There's also some illustrations in there of more practical things like a scaffold that we hope will go up very, very soon. So I'll just give you a really quick update. We've now appointed a principal contractor and a specialist brickwork conservator. And Simpson Brick are actually based in Rowledge, so really, really local, which makes that sort of story really nice. The principal contractor, management and construction services, they're in the process as we speak of applying for a scaffold licence, and we're just waiting for Surrey County Council now to approve a traffic management plan for the scaffold, which is essentially just to allow residents coming out of Bishopsmead to enter onto West Street sort of safely where their sort of visuals might be obscured by the scaffold. So we're just hoping that that will come through any time now. And we are working towards the second sort of third week of December, being the time hopefully where the old safety scaffold will finally come down, and it will be seamlessly replaced by the new scaffold. And as you sort of flick through, you'll see a sort of an image of what that new scaffold will look like. But it will cover the whole front facade. It will have a sort of a tin roof to protect the works that will be going up onto the roof. It will have sort of working platforms at each level of the building and sort of stairways, and the whole thing will be sort of shrouded in a protective covering. And the great thing is really that all of the works are external, so the museum will operate as normal, business as usual, sort of throughout the whole process, which is good news. So once that scaffold is up, we can really share then what the activity, the sort of the programme, the construction plan will be. That will kickstart everything off. But the programme is just under 70 weeks long, so it's a very long process. And we're hoping to have that finished by March 2026. But there are lots of variables when dealing with an old building, and also dealing with the weather that we now experience, and the traditional building materials that they use are ones that are quite sensitive to that weather as well. So there's quite a lot of variables in there, but we have made really good contingency for those sorts of eventualities. Once that scaffold is finally up, our historic building surveyor will completely accurately survey the building and produce scale drawings, almost brick by brick, of the decorative brickwork. And from those scale drawings, they produce things called templates, which is what's used to mould the bricks almost. They're sort of cut and rubbed and shaped according to their sort of individual templates. So it's an extremely complicated, complex historic brickwork sort of restoration process. And that will give it the sort of very fine appearance of sculpted sort of brickwork. And then basically, once that resurveying is done, sections of the facade will be sort of recorded, dismantled, and then completely rebuilt using the new gauged brickwork. And obviously they will restore and keep any brickwork that they can. They don't want to, replace historically significant building fabric if they don't have to. And that whole process will start with sort of the parapet wall and then the cornice, and bit by bit. Quite a lot of that work will initially happen off-site, so all the bricks will be sort of cut and rubbed off-site at Simpson Bricks workshop, which is at Hampton Court. So we're sort of preparing for the fact that although it might look as if not much is happening on site, it's just happening elsewhere. We've also managed to, with the extra bits of funding that we have, to appoint a timber and joinery conservator to replace not replace, sorry, that's not what's happening, to restore the original sash windows on the front of the building, which date to 1717, so they are the original sash windows, and also the pipework and leadwork. So, and then the whole facade will be really lightly cleaned. So hopefully it will look really wonderful when that scaffold finally kind of comes down. We haven't got all the funding that we would like to deal with the back of the building yet, but we do have our sights on another funding pot, which opens actually this week, to look for some funding to repair the external window frames on the back as well, because we know that they are in a very vulnerable condition. In fact, they get the full sort of force of the weather because they're a south-facing elevation. So it seemed like a very, very long time getting here, but I think we can safely say that as soon as that licence comes through from highways, we are sort of ready to go, and the team is ready to get on with it. So, but the real purpose of coming tonight really is to talk and focus on the museum service. And I'm really pleased to be joined by Peter Glanville from Farnham Maltings, who can tell us a little bit more about the work that the Farnham Maltings do for us to deliver the museum, but other things around the borough as well.
Thank you, Charlotte. Thank you for the opportunity to talk about the museum. I think I want to kind of start by just saying what a strong relationship there has been between Farnham Maltings and Waverley over the last 12 years. I've been in this position for coming up for 2 years, and I've had a strong kind of handover with my predecessor, and what I kind of recognise really strongly with the museum is just how significant it is to a very broad community, from not just Farnham, not just Waverley, but also beyond that. That we have over 50 schools from across the southeast that come to the museum, and the reason they come to the museum and the reason those children go away just feeling incredibly invigorated is because we've got a team that bring alive the collections at the museum. The opportunity to see these bronze and Stone Age collections, mammoth tooth. We have actors that we place in the museum who dress up in Victorian costume, take the children back to those worlds. So for us, the museum is a place that holds these incredible collections that are there to preserve history, to share history, to bring history to life. But also it's a place that's interactive, a place for people to feel that they can come in and be a part of history in some way. Alongside the school visits that we have, there are community events throughout the years, and we know that that people come from all over Waverley and beyond for Easter events where we have sheep shearing alongside tours of the building. We know that people come for the Christmas events that we have, summer evening concerts in the garden, and the feedback that we get from people that come is just that they didn't realise there was such an amazing garden outside at the back, that they didn't realise that this was a Grade 1 listed building of international significance, and that they didn't realise there was so many surprises amongst the collection. So I think what I've come to understand very, very quickly is that the museum really is a jewel in the crown of Waverley, and that its significance is not just these incredible collections that are held there, but also the building, also Wilmer House. This Grade 1 listed building. Our conservator who came along said, I'm working in Mesopotamia at the moment. I'm more excited by this because there just aren't examples of this kind of brickwork that you have. So there's a kind of two sides in a way. There's the outside, and the building itself, which is part of the story that we tell, but also there's the incredible collections. We're at an amazing transformative point, and I think the way that Farnham Maltings and Waverley have worked together to successfully get the funding from the Arts Council with MEND, and more recently to successfully get the Heritage Lottery funding has been a kind of testament to how closely we're working and how supportive we are of each other through this process. And I'm looking forward to seeing the faces of people when the second lot of scaffolding finally comes down, and we can see the glory of that building being restored. And it's a kind of phoenix rising moment, I think. The regeneration of the building, and what we wanted to talk about today is where that places the museum in terms of the future, because we know that over the next 18 months, we're going to be running a whole range of engagement activities for the people of Farnham, the people of Waverley, to come and learn more about what's happening with the project, but also an opportunity for them to see the museum and see what the museum holds, but also kind of feel that it's an opportunity for us to now be thinking about the inside of the museum. And museums have shifted so much over the last decade in a way which is extraordinary. And I think particularly in terms of engaging younger generations coming through, the expectations of interactive experiences, the expectations of a sensitive way of bringing in digital technology to bring things to life is something that we really want to start exploring. How can we share these incredible Bronze Stone Age collections, the story of Wilmer House, with a new community of people, a new audience for the future, in a way that's going to embrace technology, but also enable us to just communicate the past in a way that's extraordinary. So the proposal that we want to talk about today really is to set up a working group that can really look at what that vision might be for the future, look at how we can move forward over the next decade with a vision that is creating a museum that's there for future generations, a museum that really celebrates the uniqueness of Wilmer House as this internationally significant building, but also a vision that now allows a transformation that can be sustainable, a transformation that can be sustainable financially, and a transformation that can be sustainable in terms of the greenness of the building as well, which is something that's at the forefront of our mind, the kind of being kind of ecologically mindful in terms of how we celebrate the museum. So it's a starting point that's very much aligned to where we are with this restoration project, an opportunity to really kind of look and embrace the possibilities for the future. I've got lots of ideas, but what I want to do is to open this up. It'd be great to set up a working group, having representatives that from kind of Waverley Council, but also I think bringing in outside expertise as well. It would be great to bring in somebody who's been through a journey where they've transformed a museum in an extraordinary way. I went to the Florence Nightingale museum recently. It's amazing there. You kind of go and there's incredible objects and history, but also things that bring to life the story of nursing in a broader context. I think it would be great to also bring somebody in from the kind of education sector, and there's huge opportunities for us to really build on the kind of the links that we have with education, but how can that extend to the researchers that we work with at UCA? How can that extend to colleges and universities alongside the primary and secondary schools that come along to the museum? Within Farnham Maltings, we have a lot of expertise in terms of community engagement and in terms of how we support well-being through creative and cultural activities. So I think we bring a level of knowledge and expertise there. So that's kind of really the essence of what today's proposal is about. To be thinking about the future, to be thinking about what could be for Farnham Museum and what that can be for the people of Waverley in the future.
Thank you very much. Let's throw it open to the committee. I mean, I don't know how many people visited. We've got so many museums in Waverley, actually, and they're all good in their own way. The Farnham one has had its downs, ups, thank goodness. But, you know, as you say, the partnership with Maltings has worked well. But, you know, we do have to admit that the museum does need a revamp, not just the outside. And of course, it's always been a question of what is the museum? Is it the building? Is it obviously the service inside? And there's been all sorts of talk in the past of moving the service out. But it would be terrible not to use that building because it's so much part of it. But those of us who've been to many museums, it depends on the age of your children and grandchildren, doesn't it? I mean, we went to one in Scotland and you were in the middle of a battlefield. And, you know, there were all these, and you were really going like this, you know, you were terrified. You had horses going past you. And I mean, it's extraordinary what they can do now to recreate something, you know. I'm not saying we need Bannockburn in Farnham, but you know, the possibilities are amazing. And as you say, there's room for everything. Anybody have any questions or comments for Peter or Charlotte? Councillor Ravini.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chairman. I mean, obviously I've read this and I've been involved with the paperwork over many years. What can I say really? I think it's a wonderful plan. It's obviously got to go ahead. It will serve the community of Farnham well, particularly as you say, the education side, so that when young people grow up, they can look at history, they can look at other things, and they will educate. I mean, I come from Hazelmere, and we've got a superb museum down there. So I'm somewhat jealous about funding perhaps, but I can't go there again. So yes, I think the development of all the museums across Waverley should be done. I would hope that once they finish Farnham, then perhaps they could look at one of the other museums and put something in there so that we could also do the same down there. It is the buildings that appear to be the problem.
When I was first on the council, we had tourism as part of our brief. And I remember going to the very first meeting. We all went off into our little rooms, and all you could hear was Hazelmere's got more leaflets than we have. No, Farnham's got more leaflets. And basically, we all just sort of fought our own corner. You know, there was some poor person saying, "We're looking at tourism across the borough." You know, I have to say we were all a bit parochial. Councillor Monroe.
Yeah, thanks very much, Chairman. To answer the exam question, we are asked to comment on forming a working group. Well, that's an easy one. I can't believe anybody does not want to do that. But I hope we take the opportunity at this meeting to go much further than that. I see that the shortfall in the budget is some £40,000. And there's also the Maltings per se is subsidising the museum by 20,000, if I really, whatever the figures are. I mean, that is clearly unsustainable. I have to say I'm astonished that there's been no indexing since the original grant of £70,000. We all know the constraints there. But I wonder if this committee can put forward a recommendation to our masters and the executive to say, could they very seriously consider increasing the grant, if possible, to play catch up to what it should have been if it had been indexed, but that may be a bit hard to swallow during the budget process. But at least we should put down a marker, I hope, that we really, while recognising financial constraints, of course we all do, nevertheless, this is near the top of our priorities.
That seems highly sensible to me. I presume we can come up with a wording to add to the recommendation I've got here. Does anybody else have any comments? Yeah, Councillor Murray.
Thank you, Peter, for your ideas and your vision of it, and to everybody else involved, Charlotte and Kiko, and everybody involved in the whole project. It's a marvellous thing, Farnham, and you should all be credited for the work you've all put into it to get it this far. So thinking about the working group, there'll be councillors on it. Well, they don't have to be Farnham councillors, but are you asking for volunteers to say I'd like to be on it, or are you going to pick them? I don't know, at random. I mean, how that's the process of that. I think you will get volunteers. I know there's councillors want to do it. I think what I would like to see is an end user on it, so that whoever, the people who are actually going to be your users. So you talked about education, so it'd be good maybe as the head of one of the local schools would be quite good. They're going to be one of your users or somebody like that. And then you'll talk about having a business person on there, a person who's transformed a museum would be good, but certainly a business person. And even if you've got to, I suppose, pay them, or get them as a consultant of that onto that committee, I think that's what it would really help, that you've got somebody who, because you're talking about spending money, of course, and it's how that money's spent. Councillors will all have a wish list. I'm sure they'll all go, oh yeah, we'll have this, and this. And, but I think it needs somebody who needs to be from a business perspective So they're the two things I would like to see on there. On this working group, I think they would be very good, but I wish you great success with it, and I hope the whole project goes well. And I'm sure you've got all the support of certainly from all the Farnham councillors on Waverley. Thank you very much.
Yes,
I think we could add Hazelmere councillors who do support it.
Oh, no, absolutely.
Yeah, no, we definitely.
Yeah, I don't think this needs to be Farnham
No,
people only by any stretch. It's somebody who's got an interest and a knowledge we need. Living in Farnham doesn't need all the wisdom in the
That
world.
might be a good thing. Somebody who's worked with getting Hazelmere's museum, which is very successful. Maybe someone from Hazelmere councillor could say, well, this is how we got it successful there. That might be quite a good thing.
I mean, personally, I think we've got to be even wider than that. I mean, I would go to Scotland, Wales, anywhere. And if there's if there's something that we need that expertise, then we bring it in, I would have thought. So we have a recommendation. We have two recommendations now. The first recommendation was to work alongside the Maltings to support the development, a new vision and strategy for the museum. By nominating, it does say councillors to be part of a working group. I think that's highly dangerous. I think we will get councillors at some point. I don't think we self-nominate tonight. Have us all. To be part of the working group, which includes representatives of the Maltings, the museum, Waverley Arts and Cultural Services Manager, but also, I mean, do we make a longer list, people from education?
Yeah.
Can we rely on you to do that, or do we have to do that? I mean, Councillor Moore, you mentioned education.
Yeah, education and also from a business perspective.
Yes, we want to add those to the recommendation, people with business experience and obviously those education, and indeed anybody with expertise in modern museums, so that you can see what is available, because they are really so different from what they used to be. I think when I first went to the Farm Museum, I seem to recall an old tumble dryer. We all looked at it and wonder, imagine taking your grandchildren these days to see a tumble dryer.
It's still there.
Councillor Ravini?
Thank you. I just want to make sure that the people have looked at crime prevention. I've got to be careful.
Oh, yeah.
In Hazelmere, for example, as you know, they stole the rhino's horn, which captured national. They got it back eventually many years later. But of course, please, if you can, get some good advice to stop the thefts.
Yeah, it's something that's a high consideration all the time, and I know it's something that we're going through the kind of new process of accreditation at the moment as well, and looking at that, and that's sort of very much part of that as well.
The second recommendation, which comes from Councillor Monroe, is to recommend to the executive that it resolves to increase the currently non-indexed grant of £70,000 to bring it up to its modern value. Had it been indexed, we would say that, but can you phrase that, Kim, to sort of make it make sense? I think that's a really good thing. I mean, if it has been, stuck at that level for that long, I mean, it really can't be doing its job, can it? So I think that's well spotted, Councillor Monroe. Anybody else?
We won't get it, of course, but
No,
we might get it.
We might just prick some discussion. Is there anything else we need to recommend? I think the important thing is to get that well. We'll get through the first bit. I don't know if anybody else managed to get through Farnham last Wednesday. It was a nightmare, and it was a nightmare because one lane was what the word is, buried off from the general public, and it was chaos, absolute chaos. And I tried to avoid the chaos and just joined in other chaos or whatever. And my thoughts did go to the scaffolding along West Street, and I thought, let's hope when this is sort of up, there isn't a huge amount. I mean, there will be some disruption, so we'll get over that period. Then we'll marvel at the building. But yes, if we can work away at getting this so that we've got a service to match building, I think the whole borough can be very proud. Thank you, Charlotte and Peter, for your time and for your information. Sorry,
For the sake of agreed to see recommendation.
right, we have to agree. Right, so there's two recommendations, one about the working group, one about asking for the non-index linked grant to be raised. Are we all in agreement with that?
Agreed.
Thank you. Thank you very much indeed. Which brings us to item 9, which is something that used to come to this committee frequently. And then, I don't know whether it's COVID, it somehow dropped. But the air quality, which Jeanette will tell us all about it, is one of these strange things that we as a borough monitor it, but we can do very little else. But there is good news in this.
Well, thank you, Chair. Good evening, everyone. Just sort of, I want to just look at some background and information before I look at the outputs from the annual status report. I think it's important to note that DEFRA's National Air Quality Strategy describes poor air quality as the biggest environmental threat to public health, equivalent to about 28,000 to 43 deaths per year in 2022. The Public Health Outcome Framework predicted that the fraction of total mortality attributable to particulate air pollution in Waverley was 5.5% in 2022, and that was against England at 5.8% as a whole. I'm sure members will recall that we adopted our updated air quality action plan and the clean air strategy for Waverley in the spring of 2023. The air quality action plan really is our strategy for reducing nitrogen dioxide within our air quality management areas in Godalming and Farnham, and they're the hotspot areas for nitrogen dioxide. And the clean air strategy is our strategy to reduce nitrogen dioxide and fine particulates across the borough, not just within the AQMAs. The annual status report is a document that must be completed each year and submitted to DEFRA, and it must follow the prescribed template that they have provided. And the ASR 2024 reviews the monitoring data and actions taken in 2023. The monitoring data concentrates on nitrogen dioxide. We have 2 high-quality, high-cost automatic monitoring stations, one in the Farnham AQMA that measures nitrogen dioxide and particulates, and one in the Godalming AQMA that just measures nitrogen dioxide. There is also a network of low-resolution, low-cost diffusion tubes in 51 locations across the borough. Unfortunately, there is no low-cost type of monitoring for particulates as there is for nitrogen dioxide, but hopefully that explains why the report and certainly the monitoring concentrates on nitrogen dioxide as opposed to particulates. There is a summary of actions taken in respect of the Air Quality Action Plan in table 2.2, starting at page 11 of the report, but that's page 69 of the reports pack. And there is a summary of actions taken in respect of the Clean Air Strategy in table C.1, starting at page 42 of the report, and that's page 100 of the reports pack. Just looking at the outcomes of the report, the sort of monitoring summary, there were no exceedances of the annual air quality objective for nitrogen dioxide across the borough in 2023. The automatic monitoring results showed that levels of nitrogen dioxide measured in the Farnham and Godalming air quality monitoring by the monitoring stations were 18 micrograms per cubic metre and 19 micrograms per cubic metre against an objective of 40 micrograms per cubic metre. So that's quite less than the 40 standard. The diffusion tubes, we applied the most robust bias correction factor that has to be applied to them. And the highest annual mean nitrogen dioxide levels measured in the Farnham and Godling at relevant receptors, that's where people might be exposed, were 31.7 micrograms per meter cubed, and that was at 25 the Borough at first floor. That's just by the traffic close to the traffic lights where South Street and the Borough cross over, and 29.4 along Oxford Road, just outside the AQMA. The highest annual mean nitrogen dioxide level measured in Waverley was 32 micrograms per cubic meter, and that was at ground floor level along the Borough next to a shop, but that wasn't a relevant receptor. And really, we recommended that monitoring should continue to check air quality against the air quality objectives, and that levels do not deteriorate in the future. As for the sort of actions, sort of the key outcomes were that obviously we adopted the new or updated air quality action plan and clean air strategy. The works being undertaken regarding the Farnham infrastructure project led by Surrey County Council and Farnham Town Council, with some input, I think, from Waverley Borough Council. Programmes supported to improve provision of EV charge points in Waverley, led by our sustainability team. We participated in the first ever Clean Air Night campaign on Wednesday the 24th of January 2024. So that's just after 23, but a lot of work that went into that was during 23. And yeah, I think that was helpful. It was all about solid fuel burning and trying to raise awareness about the impact it has on the environment and air quality. We progressed the low EV taxi trial project. We got DEFRA grant monies for that, about 256,000. That's we bid for monies on behalf of Surrey. There has been delays to that project at the moment. They're have not been caused by Waverley, but we're still trying to take that project forward. We worked with Surrey Heartlands ICB to support the implementation of a paediatric toolkit for parents and schools, including promoting the school's air quality monitoring for health and education project. Yeah, and that's all about sort of having schools that are designated asthma friendly and properly managing kids with asthma. We worked with, certainly our sustainability team did, with town and parish councils and local active travel groups to develop our local cycle and walking infrastructure plans for Farnham and Waverley. And again, we've worked with Surrey County Council, active travel team and schools, a transport team, to try and improve road safety, promote school travel plans through mode shift stars, bikeability training, feet first walking training, school crossing patrols, eco schools, and Let's Go Zero. The priorities for 2024 is again the Farnham infrastructure project, supporting ongoing projects to install more EV charging points, the low-cost trials of the EV taxis that I mentioned before, and also undertake work to investigate the feasibility of low-emission zones within Waverley, including completing AMPR surveys in Farnham and Godling. Continue to work with Surrey Heartlands on the paediatric asthma tools kit, the LC whips for Farnham and Waverley, and again, working with Surrey about active travel measures to try and reduce pollution through through working with schools, and continue to implement our clean air strategy, and also review the need for the Farnham air quality management areas, for the air quality management areas in Farnham and Godalming. And just to comment on feedback from DEFRA, they appraise all the reports that we do. They concluded that the report was accepted for all sources and pollutants. They said that both AQMAs have been compliant with the air quality objectives since 2020, and if compliance continues during the next reporting year, revocation of both AQMAs may be considered. They said there were 6 air quality action plan measures outlined within the report. This is the Air Quality Action Plan report. All measures have been implemented, planned or completed and have been fully justified in table 2.2, and that Waverley Borough Council have stated within their report that they continue to implement measures that have been set out in the action plan and clean air strategy, and that shows we are serious in their efforts to improve air quality within their jurisdiction, which is commended. So we thought that was quite good actually from DEFRA, given things that they have said in previous reports. Yeah, so hopefully I might be able to answer questions if there are any.
Thank you, Jeanette. It sounds as though we've gone from a B+ to an A-, have we? Getting
hopefully
or a B++. But anyway, I must say it's exhausting reading all the things you're doing. Thank you very much, and it's good news. Committee, any questions for Councillor Ravini?
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Yes, I'm being parochial again. I read all the figures and everything else, and there's huge mention of Farnham and Godalming. Hazelmere, WBC 25B, 66 Lower Street, has in fact got the 4th highest pollution. Now, my problem is I don't know what's going on down there. So I would like more communication, perhaps with the town councillors and local people, is to find out how we do something about it. It's a very poor spot. The road itself is awful, it's narrow, there's a lot of old housing either side of it, the pavement is very poor. It's not a good area. There's very little room for improvement, but I would like to try and do something. So perhaps you could have some more communication to town council. Like everybody else, we've declared this climate emergency, and we want to see this coming down. I didn't realise that that was so high in that particular place.
It's interesting, at our pre-meeting, Councillor Townsend was very worried because he didn't have an air quality management area in Cranley. And I said, well, that's because you don't have an air quality issue. You don't always want to have everything everybody else has. I'll just go back to Jeanette. Can you answer Councillor Ravini's? Are you up to speed?
Well, looking at 66 Lower Street, which is WBC 25B, the levels in 2023 were 25.7 mg per cubic meter against a objective of 40. So we're way below that. However, clearly, yeah, we monitor in those places where we actually think air quality might be the highest in an area. The reason we do that is so that if it's high, you know, if we've got the level there, we can assume that the levels are lower elsewhere within those locations. And clearly measures that we are taking, certainly with regard to the clean air strategy, will be, yeah, we'll have regard to trying to reduce nitrogen dioxide and particulates across the borough. One reason we really were keen to ensure there was a clean air strategy in place is because if we revoke, and therefore actually say if you have 5 years compliance, then you really have to look seriously at revoking the air quality management areas. Then of course the air quality action plan we've got would be null and void because we don't have any air quality management areas. However, we can fall back to our clean air strategy, which deals, because it's important to you know, not just work to those objectives, but given impacts on health, we need to be doing more than that. And that's what our air quality strategy is all about. And we can fall back on an air quality strategy to be able to take actions forward. Hopefully that's answered your query, Councillor.
He doesn't look as though.
No, I understand what you're saying. My problem is that I want to know what we as a local town council, borough council, county council can actually do at these spots that we've got in there. What we can actually physically do, because obviously we could put some money towards it or whatever is needed, but we don't know what we can do. And I think more communication with our town council would help me to understand the problem and what we could possibly do about it.
I think the frustrating, I take Jeanette because she knows the answer, but I think the frustrating thing as members has always been that we do the monitoring of this and send the report over to DEFRA, but there's nothing really as a borough that we can do about it other than all these initiatives that Jeanette's already said to improve the air across the borough, not just in the hotspots. Sorry, Jeanette, I interrupted you.
No, that's fine. I'm listening. No, I don't disagree with what you say, but there are lots of different actions there to try and improve air quality. I mean, as it is, I think the natural turnover of the fleet will, vehicle fleet will improve things further. But having said that, I agree. Actually, we should be working with town and parish councils more and to work on what can be done. There is a template on Waverley Borough Council's website, and it's for individuals, external organisations to have a look at and look at what kind of actions they could take themselves to improve air quality. I mean, really, it's not something that just the Borough Council can do. It has to be a joint effort. And shall I email that link around to town and parish councils, Councillor?
Yes, please.
Would that be good? Yeah, I mean, it was done when we produced our air quality strategy and our action plan air quality strategy, but I will make sure that is done again.
That would be very good because, as you say, we've all got to play our part, and I think most of us are trying to do something. And certainly, as I say, going back to your list of priorities and all the people you're working with, it's very impressive.
Thank you.
It certainly is. I think we've got Councillor Hyman online who wants to speak on this matter. Okay, I'll take Councillor Hyman, then you. Sorry, Councillor Keane.
That's very kind of you. Thank you very much. There are things that we can do actually in the Environment Act. We do have powers to force Surrey County Council to act to put in place elements in the Air Quality Action Plan, and we don't have to do what Surrey County Council puts forward. I mean, we are the people who are responsible for solving the problem effectively, but we haven't done so for the past nearly 20 years since the AQMA was first put in place. So that we do have powers, but obviously that it takes work and it would take resources in order to be able to do that. But I think it's what this committee should be asking for us to be using the powers we've got. I do think we should be worried that the DEFRA letter supports the revocation of Farnham AQMA, certainly before Surrey's measures are completed and tested. I mean, the idea that we're not going to shift pollution from the town centre to the outlying areas, but if we're putting in place deliberately congesting measures to force a modal shift, I mean, it's got to cause pretty bad congestion to do that, as you well know, Chairman. I mean, I know you've been following this for a long time, and we think alike in many areas of this, I think. But it could be disastrous for the retail economy, and we might be asking, or they may be demanding, that the old system or some of it be reinstated. We don't know. So it would be far too early to consider revocation when most of those years actually were affected by COVID and the COVID measures. And that's part of it. But the big issue here, as with the local plan, is that we're still going down the road of avoiding the likely consequences of our actions. We were told in last year's AQMA, Chairman, it says that a hybrid option of the two previous options for Farnham is being modelled in terms of traffic and air quality. We haven't had any. You've got no modelling of air quality and likely outputs in front of you. The information you really need is not there in front of you because Surrey aren't doing the modelling. They pretended they had, but until the 22nd of July 2023 Farnham board meeting, that they had modelled this in parametrics and it was fine, but they haven't. They're now claiming that the two-way traffic in the borough is going to be fine because the modelling says so, but they're not showing us the modelling, and we are committed. Page 41 of your documents there, Chairman, says the FIP is committed to modelling air quality prior to making changes. Well, they haven't done that. And we will continue to monitor air quality in Farnham to check any impact of changes. Well, it might not be happening from what we're being told. We're doing the opposite, therefore, of what it says in our papers. And this is all about this is all about Surrey County Council trying to impose this without letting residents know the consequences of our actions in advance and to be consulted upon it, which is the position that both the leader and our then MP took back at the beginning of the FIP, that we must put it in front of residents with the consequences known, and that hasn't been done. So I think some strong things in relation to the document we've got in front of us should be said, particularly no move to remote the AQMA until the outcome of the works is known. I think it's important that the committee takes its responsibility seriously on that. And of course, we're still well over the World Health Organization limits that they want, as far as congestion, as far as compliance.
Councillor Hyman, because you've had a good long go. I really.
You've been very kind. Thanks.
Can I just come back to Jeanette on Surrey? You were sort of nodding a bit. I couldn't quite work out.
Well, I agree with some of the comments that have been made. I think that the revocation of the AQMA, I understand Councillor Hyman's views on that, and I think that's something that, you know, I guess if a report comes to members, you'll have to take account of that and whether you decide to revoke it or not. And if you don't, then, you know, there's good reason for not doing that. But if DEFRA requires us to consider that, then you will have considered that. As for the Farnham infrastructure project and modelling of air quality, no, disappointingly, they haven't modelled air quality. We've asked them to do it numbers of times. We've kept that line. You know, I would have thought it would have been really helpful to model air quality to inform members and the public making informed decisions about impacts on air quality and you know, different scenarios. But that hasn't happened, and you know, we've tried to influence them to do that. And as for other traffic management options, then yes, Surrey County Council often, you know, it's their decision whether they're going to take something forward or help fund it. And again, you know, we try and influence them as much as we can, but in the end, they are the people that would decide what was going to go forward or not.
And is there any point in us as a committee doing anything? You strike me as very formidable, Jeanette, so I can't really say that we would be even more formidable. But well, you know, is there anything we can do to express our dissatisfaction with Surrey County Council?
Well, I mean, I you know, as for the Farnham infrastructure project, I mean, I've said it every single time. But you know, we've met. But if you want to add that, I think, having said that, I suspect they've already decided what they're going to do. So you know, that's that situation. You know, if the scheme had needed planning permission, we would have required modelling, but it didn't need planning permission. So it's a difficult one for us, really. But if you wish to make some kind of comments to Surrey County Council, then it just adds to that, really.
Thank you very much. I think we probably should. Councillor Keane, I know you've been waiting for a long time.
Oh, that's all right, Chairman. Just one of the things I was going to follow on from Councillor Rubini about, you know, Lower Street in Hazelmere. We have fairly good traffic flow in Hazelmere until the tunnel closes, and then we have total chaos, and the amount of emissions is shocking through Lower Street and through Way Hill, because the cars are backed up, can't get out of the side street. So, you know, we do have times when the traffic is really bad through Hazelmere. I'm sure everybody else has said, but when that tunnel closes, it's a nightmare because we have all the freight coming through, and then you really do get a lot of emissions. The other thing that I would like to touch on is promoting travel alternatives. Well, I wish somebody could explain that to their mothers and who drive their children to school, just half a mile down the road, some of them, but they have, you know, there they are puffing away with emissions, but encouraging them to get on their feet is a nightmare, and it causes dreadful trouble around the town because there's, you know, there's just the snarl of traffic twice a day.
I'm glad
And
you
healthy
said,
children too.
glad you said emissions. I have visions of them all.
No. Probably do, I don't know, but from their exhausts.
Right,
But
no,
it
no.
would be so nice if parents could actually
Yeah.
think about walking their children to school.
Yeah.
Just so nice.
I think, you know, that's part of the priorities.
Yeah.
You know. And I think if Jeanette sends that link out to all the towns and parishes, and perhaps the towns and parishes take a little more ownership of some of these matters, if they can, you know. But should we sort of bring this to a finale? Yes.
One question, sorry, Chairman. There's an element in where it says the table progress on measures to improve air quality, and there was talk of installing EV charging stations in Brightwells, which is obviously not open, but the Riverside Car Park, Lower Hart Car Park, and St James Car Park in 2024. I haven't seen any yet, and there's only a month to go. Do we know if the EV charging is happening in those things, and also in Godalming as well, in Grand Court Car Park? As the EV,
who is that?
Big Kelvin.
Is it?
Part of the capital, being part of the capital.
Yeah, I haven't seen any.
Yeah, so we can get, unless Jeanette knows otherwise. We
I,
can.
I don't know. What I can do is I can ask the sustainability team where we are on that and feedback to committee, if you like.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I mean, some of us aren't very keen on EV chargers all over the place because it seems to cause as much problem, I won't say more, than it solves. You know, I think we've got a long way to go with this infrastructure, which is why many of us, drive hybrids rather than full electric, especially if we're going down to Scotland.
I do clerk the climate emergency, the 3 climate emergency executive working groups. And I'm aware that part of it is back to the infrastructure, having to actually find, being able to link up to the grid.
Okay.
For the EV charges, making sure the actual infrastructure is there to be able to link to the grid. Because if there's not a power station,
The substation in the car
substation
park.
within a certain distance,
Yes.
they can't do it. So that's some of the issues that they're trying to address. And
Okay.
it's also that the Waverley do not want to own the EV chargers, and trying to find the suppliers
Okay.
that will manage them is also an issue as well.
Yeah, well, it makes sense.
Mr. Keane, you want to come back?
Just a point on that, I think basically what's happening is there's so many more electric vehicles that I actually see them,
got one.
waiting to.
I've got one.
Yeah, queuing up,
I see
blocking
them
all the other
queuing,
roads.
waiting to use the two, for instance, in Waitrose car
Yeah.
park. And so I think the more electric vehicles you've got on the road, there's going to have to be an awful lot more charges. to be
I
honest
agree.
with you.
I agree. I think the whole strategy's got to be.
And car parks are the best place for them to be.
Well, up to a point. And it's sort of thing. Can we not get on to too much on EV chargers? I'd like to draw this to a close. Councillor Rubini?
Just one very quick point. One of the problems I have with EV chargers, the fact that more people get into the home and they're living without any front parking, so they're now training the leads across pavements, across the road. Somebody can have an accident sooner or later, and when I see it, I try and point out to them, they must tape it down and do something.
Yeah. Yeah, it's poorly thought through. So we have a recommendation, because there's not a lot really we can do about this, but we've made quite a few comments. Have you got them all down?
I
now?
have, yes.
So we've, the recommendation is to receive the report and make comments. I think we've done that. To note the progress on actions, because there are some good points in this air quality action plan, to reduce nitrogen dioxide and the concentrations in Farnham and Godalming in the air quality management areas. So we'll note the progress on that. And we also note the progress on the actions which are detailed in the clean air strategy to reduce all NO2 and fine particulates in Waverley generally. So, it's a good news story on the whole. But I think the comments we've made in the first recommendation, I hope, are the ones that raise the issues. I think we've certainly got to encourage the towns and parishes to get involved. I hope that's in our note. I certainly hope we can encourage Surrey to play its part, but again, I hope that will be in the next or first part. So basically, we're receiving the report as we always do. That's all we can really do. You know, it's gone to DEFRA and DEFRA commented on it. Given us a did we get a commended? Did you say, Jeanette? We got to get a star for it. So
I don't know about a star, but they did. Yeah, you're right. Did it? Which is commended. You're right. We did get a commended.
So you know, so we're obviously in terms of reporting doing it. What we're not doing sometimes, working with people like Surrey, is actually getting the response that we would like to improve it even further. So I think there's places to go, more to do. But I think on the whole, thank you, Jeanette. It's a good news story. Thank you for all the work you're doing, and with all those partner organisations, because I think that's a really good way of trying to get this across the borough.
Thank you.
Anybody else got a last comment, or can we close the meeting at that point? Thank you very, very much indeed. Thank you to the officers. I hope you enjoyed your meeting with us, Suzanne.
Thank you very much for letting me.
No, nice to meet you. And thank you to the officers of God and to the officers who